1, 2, 3, 4. Check, 1, 2. Check.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you. My name is Wayne McDonald. I'm the chair. Fogless free. It's nice to see the sun for a change. This is our 38th town hall in the state of New Hampshire. And I'd like to recognize former state vice chairman J.P. Marzulli. Purpose. Thank you, JP. Now I'd like to recognize Sienna Zarek for the purposes of leading us in the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you sing by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets ran clear, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much, Sienna. That was her second appearance at one of our town halls, and we're hoping for more. So we'll have to check with your agent about future appearances. Again, thank you very much for being here this morning. This has been a real New Hampshire campaign. It's been one in which Governor Christie has had town halls in every single county in the state. He has been to large communities, he's been to small communities, he's been reaching out to New Hampshire voters on a regular basis, one-on-one, and you'll see that this morning as you offer him your questions and he gives you his answers. Governor Christie respects the New Hampshire tradition, the New Hampshire role in the nominating process. He's working very, very hard to earn our support, and we're very hopeful that when you leave here today, most of you, if not all of you, will be on board with us, because this is the best candidate for President of the United States. Especially with your help. One of the reasons we're doing so well is not just the fact that we have a fantastic supporters we have and we're getting every day to work and help and candidate. And the next gentleman that at least so far, it was 1988. I ran for state secretary, and you know, I'm doing all the usual stuff. I'm putting out. You really got to watch out for him. And I said, well, you know, the 6 seats, you know, 7 now, but we only had 6 back. And the best thing that came out of the campaign is
is Governor Christie. So I like his executive experience. I like the leadership that he has shown us over his terms as governor in the state of New Jersey, but he also has a lot of compassion. I hope many of you have had a chance to see his youth. We have compassion. We have somebody that has a high level of energy who will continue that through not just this presidential primary, through the presidential race, but is in his term states. And so I hope you will join me in a
and all of you are here this morning. I want to thank Wayne McDowell, my campaign. There's no other town hall meeting that opens with that kind of performance. Last time she did it, it was a town hall meeting that I did jointly with Maine Governor Paula Page. And when I got here this morning, I had 1 governor and not 2 to watch her performance. But I told her that Governor is going to be coming up from Maryland to campaign with me, so you could maybe perform next time in front of 3 governors instead of 2, Sienna. So we could up it a little bit for you next week. All right. Also from my wife, Mary Pat, she'll be up next week. going to major in political to do anything to bring any sense of peace or stability to the world. And when you listen to the president, he says all is well. We're doing fine. Well, that core is the lack of American strength and a challenge to be placed in front of us to do anything. In fact, just the opposite. Care of us. Government will provide for us. Government will decide for us. He has forgotten that the core of American greatness, each and every one of our citizens, their ingenuity, their aspirations, their work ethic, faith is what's made this the greatest country in the world. Because when we have leaders who know how to place a challenge before us, rise to the challenge. We don't shrink. Americans never shrink from a challenge. We rise to it and we exceed it. And so we are faced with a challenge to the most basic, a challenge. See, all those other issues I talked about are important, but they mean nothing if we don't provide for the safety and security of our people. Remember how it felt after September 11th. After September 11th, airplanes weren't flying in this country. The stock exchange wasn't operating. There were no sporting events, professional, amateur, or kids sporting events. Everything that gives a heartbeat to our country, the pulse of our day-to-day life, had stopped. Had stopped. Why? Because we were scared. We were scared to leave our homes. We were scared to go to places where we could all assemble, whether that was a soccer field or a church or a football stadium. We were scared that we were no longer safe. And so the pulse of our nation slowed to a halt. If we don't get this right, we can't get the economy right. If we don't get this right, we can't get our educational system right. If we don't get this right, we can't get our healthcare system right. None of it will work. Because if Americans are afraid to be strong and productive and out there, we can't do the rest of the work we need to do. And so the most important thing that we need today in a president is someone who understands, whose life has been about protecting the safe American people. By President Bush, 2000. The job I accepted that afternoon at 4 o'clock in the afternoon became very different by 9 o'clock. America was under attack. And I knew that one of those that attacked America had left from an airport. You're now the chief federal prosecutor. For 20 years on work days. She left at 6 o'clock. Center. And at 7:30 on September 11th, she took those big escalators up to ground level building. And back home, I turned on the television. So I called her about our day, how the kids had been in the morning, for the rest of the day. All the normal things you talk to your spouse about when they leave much too early. Have a civil conversation before that. And while we were on the phone, building, we have to evacuate to the basement. I wanted to call her, I didn't hear from her. Field from 14 probably down to 4 or 5. And it's happening in 7. I'm not running for President of the United States to make a lot of money. I'm not walk through the fire demands of you. And when I get to the Oval Office, I'm not cool. It's too important. And so it's time have a serious conversation over the next 7 weeks about who's going to be the next president of the United States. My first day as president, when the director of the FBI, Jim, he comes into my office, in the Oval Office for the first time, give me my first national security briefing. We're not going to have to introduce our U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. Worked hand in hand to solve that case and to set up protections for. Then he became boss as the deputy. He's not going to have to wonder whether I understand the acronyms he's using. He's not going to have to wonder whether I understand what's actionable intelligence. He's not going to have to wonder whether I'm going to have the backs of the men and women who work for him every day, or whether I'm going to know how to make a decision that'll be a life and death decision for the people of this country. He won't have to wonder because he's watched me do it before. This isn't like getting briefed in the basement of the Senate about some theoretical threat where all you have to do is nod and take notes, but not make any decisions that you'll ever be held accountable for. This isn't like sitting in some office building deciding whether or not you make this decision or that decision, whether you'll make another 2 cents or another 5 cents in your next quarterly report. These are the decisions that will determine the fate of this country and the lives and deaths. And I think you'd want someone in that chair who's made those decisions before. And I have. For 13, I didn't run for president 4 years ago. People here and I knew in my heart I wasn't ready. And they said to me, "Are you crazy? That video will let New Hampshire are going to have the opportunity to make a big decision for that person is going to have a chance for the rest of America to consider them, or are going to go home for president." You've done it over and over again over the decades, and now you have as serious a challenge in a lot of money in trying to eradicate disease. The efforts that George W. Bush started to eradicate know what you think. Had contact with known terrorists. Pause to be able to read their emails and listen to their phone calls. If you haven't had contact with the computer, I can't get a warrant to read your email. The Patriot Act under the I don't care what you're saying to your wife or your business partner or your kids. When I see your number matched up to the number of a known terrorist, who you are, I have to go to. I give the number, I show them, and I say, now, is that probable cause to allow me to get identity and their phone bill? Fourth Amendment, and whether it's a reasonable search and seizure. Then, once I get your phone, if you have a number of those contacts, then I have to go back to court. Can I now wiretap that phone? And can I read his mail? And you know who? A judge under the standard of the Fourth Amendment. And the liberal media that was complicit with him is making listening to everybody's phone calls, and we're not. Only those people who have given us probable cause to believe it, and only if a judge gives us permission. Whether it's in a regular district court, federal district court, or whether it's in the foreign intelligence surveillance court. That's why I asked you the question. To make sure I can let you know, as somebody 7 years with the Patriot Act right after 9/11. Allowed to do that. That's why when Senator Paul, I want more information from terrorists and less information from. Well, my question is, how do you know? But the terrorists and I'm plotting against America. How do you know? Effective electronic surveillance and human intelligence that have to. Now, will times when, as in the same reaction to that woman's question, will there be times that bad actors will do things outside the line? Of course. The same way there'll be bad intelligence officers. We need to prosecute them. Understand, this is a fake debate. It is a phony debate. And by the way, Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, because they don't have the first idea what they're talking about. And the reason they don't is because they couldn't, because they've never done it. They only know what these guys in Congress are like. They only know what their staff puts in front of them. You ever been to a congressional hearing? I've been. They get a list of questions put in front of them. They read the first question. You give an answer that isn't consistent with what they thought. You know what they do? They read the second question. Even if the second question makes no damn sense given the answer. These guys only know what they're told because they've never had to make decisions. And they've never had to be held accountable for those decisions. Every decision I've had to make as U.S. attorney and as governor, there's no one else to blame. There's not, no, I was in the minority in the subcommittee. My vote didn't really count. When you're governor or U.S. attorney, you got to put your signature on it. So I'm telling you, you don't have to sacrifice your civil liberties. You don't have to. And we're not listening to your phone calls or reading your emails unless you're cavorting with known terrorists. Then if you are, I want to listen to your phone calls and I want to read your emails, and I don't think there's an American that wouldn't want me to read those emails and listen to those phone calls. So that's why I asked you. I thought you weren't running for president, but given there's so many of us, I thought maybe I might have missed you, you know? But that's why I asked the question, because it's important for you all to know. I don't care. I don't care about what you're doing as long as you're doing it legally. And if you're not trying to kill Americans or hurt our country, have at it. Say whatever you want in your emails and your phone calls. Fine by me. All right, everybody's pointing to this kid here, right? So now I want to tell you something. I'm calling on you. Stand up. But here's the thing. There's now enormous pressure on you. Right? Really good question. Give this kid a shot. You got it. What's your name?
My name's Robert DeFelice.
What do you got, buddy?
Okay, my mom owns a small business in New Hampshire, hanging on by our fingertips for quite a while now. How are you the country has ever seen?
Congratulations, Robert. You cleared the bar. Way to go. All right. One of the reasons why, I suspect, you all been hanging on by a thread in your small business is because the government is suffocating you. Suffocating you with enormous. This government, in 2014, issued 81,000 new pages of federal regulation. 81,000 pages. Every small business in this country, an accountant, how to figure out how to stay out of trouble. Every small business in this country has to worry about if they expand a size that's too large, dealing with Obamacare and all the regulations that, and the cost. The cost of complying with federal regulation now for small business in this country, and this is the statistic for me, it's from President Obama's Small Business Administration, is $10,000 per employee. Per employee to comply with federal regulation. Wyoming or Montana? How do you survive that? Code. Here's what should happen. Most small business, subchapter S companies, they pay your taxes through your personal income taxes. So it will help most of the small businesses in this country. And what we need to do is get rid of all the loopholes, all the deductions, everything except for two. The home mortgage interest deduction and the charitable contribution deduction. Those are the deductions that real people use, that help you to own a home, that help you to support the local charities or national charities that you believe help the things that you're most concerned with. We want to encourage that. After that, no more. That will allow us to lower rates down to 28% on the high end, which is where it was when Ronald Reagan did tax reform in 1986, with a senator from New Jersey, by the way, Bill Bradley, and the low end at 8%. And you'll be able to do your taxes, your mom will be able to do hers, in 15 minutes. Here's how much I made, here's how much I paid in mortgage interest, here's how much I donated to charity, there's the number, multiply times the bracket, send the check and be done. Rather than pay an accountant, have to assemble all those records, then of course there's always records missing, then you gotta go back and get more records, and you spend more of your time trying to work around this. 15 minutes instead of 15 days to do your taxes, and you get to keep more of your own money. And by the way, as a sidelight, just for our enjoyment and entertainment purposes, because I'm sensitive to that, we're going to be able to fire about half the IRS agents after that, too, which will be really nice. On regulation, what we need to do is to make sure that every regulation that's out there has some kind of common sense to it. So what I did in New Jersey, my first executive order as governor in January of 2010 was to suspend any new regulation from any government agency or department for 90 days. And then I sent my lieutenant governor around the state to hold podcasts, to listen to small. Same thing as president. First executive order I'll sign is suspend any new regulation from any federal department or. But we're going to need more than 90 days because it's the federal government. And I'll send the vice president out to do the exact same thing that I sent the lieutenant governor out to do. Bipartisan hearings, public, around the country. Crazy. What is costing you so much money? What's stopping you from being able to expand? What's preventing? And by the way, on the first day, we will also get rid of the illegal Obama executive orders that he's put into place. Taxes and regulation will really see the government grow. The economy grow without the government getting. We'll really see the economy grow. And someone will be using that one in a commercial next fall. So that's what we need to do. And it's and simple. But what it does is it unleashes the power of your mother, the power of small business owners who care about growing their business, care about being prosperous, and gets the government out of their pocket and off their back. And if we can do that, I always believe in the ingenuity and the work ethic of the American people. It's what's always made this country the economic powerhouse it is, and we need to get the government out of the game of picking winners and losers, and we need to let the winners and losers be picked by the consumers in this country who will pick the people with the best ideas and the best work ethic, and that's the way we should do it. So good question, Robert. Thanks for asking.
Good morning.
Good morning.
What qualities and skill sets will you be looking at for your running mate?
Oh, all right. By the way, that's when you know you're moving up in the polls, when people start asking you about your running mate, right? That's good. Right, first and foremost, in your heart and in your mind, you have to believe that person can be president of the United States. You have to be able to picture that person as president. If you don't clear that bar, then you have no business considering anything else. So the first thing I'll consider is that person qualified? Can I picture this person, if something were to happen to me, to be able to be president of the United States? Secondly, I would love to have someone as well with executive experience. Now, it wouldn't be absolutely a non-starter if they didn't, but I'd prefer it. I'd prefer someone who can look at me when I'm making a decision that they might think is wrong and be able to have the experience to say to me, you know what, I've been through this, Mr. President, and I wouldn't necessarily do it that way, and here's why. If I have someone who has that kind of experience, that will give them more credibility with me. Third, I want someone who's compatible with me. I want to have a vice president that I actually like. Because let's face it, everybody, if you're working with someone you don't like, you don't work with them. You just don't. And especially if you're president, like who's going to tell you you have to, right? So I want to pick someone who's compatible, someone who I enjoy spending time with, and whose opinions and whose values I respect. Fourth, I'd like to have somebody who I know in their heart is willing to sacrifice anything they have to sacrifice for the good of the country. That this is not a vanity exercise. That this isn't something that they're doing because they want a new title. But I want somebody who I really believe is doing this for the right reasons. And the only way to do that is to sit down and talk with them, get to know them, and get that feel. So those are the four things that I'd consider. And someone asked me last night at the town hall meeting, you know, would I consider a woman? And I said, listen, I'm the father of 2 daughters. I am the husband of a very strong wife who has out-earned me every year of our marriage. And I am the son of the strongest woman I've ever met in my life. What Mary Pat and I have tried to teach our daughters, one who's Sarah's 19, Bridget's 12. So we're teaching this actively to Sarah and trying to begin it with Bridget, is that I don't want my daughters to ever think that there's anything that limits their ability to do anything in their life. And I don't want them to ever believe that their self-esteem, their value, their self-worth comes from a man. It comes from inside them. And so if I'm trying to teach that to my daughters, because I believe in my heart, from all the examples I have around me in my life, then of course I would consider a woman for that job too, if she meet those 4 criteria. And I don't think there should be any regard for gender in all this. Whoever the best person is, you should pick them, and picking a woman would certainly be something I'd consider if they met those 4 criteria. All right. Now, all right. In the back. Yes, ma'am.
Hi. One of the concerns, I'm so undecided I don't even know what party I'm going to vote for right now. But one of the concerns I have is some of the rhetoric that's talked about with the elite media. And for example, on Morning Joe, they criticized Jim Foley's mother. Jim Foley's mother. When the guy said something inappropriate in Rochester to Donald Trump, he was criticized and called hateful. Nobody mentioned that he lived in the town where somebody's head was cut off. Head was cut off. But yet, when we talk about the criminals, they're called masterminds, sophisticated. It doesn't take a lot to destroy something. That never takes. And it doesn't seem like the candidates back us and support us and stand up for us. I mean, somebody says one wrong thing and it's replayed over and over and criticized. And for Jim Foley's mother to be criticized, I thought that was ridiculous.
Well, I agree with you. Welcome to my world. Right? This is what I was talking about before with regard to the president. And you could talk about it with regard to other people in public life now as well. No one's listening. They're not listening to you. And what they don't understand about some of the folks who are very, very angry and disgruntled and disillusioned in this country is it's not because they're bigots or xenophobes. It's not because they don't love this country. It's not because of anything that's happened personally to them for the most part. It's because they believe that their leaders are no longer listening to them, that we don't share your frustration, and that we don't give voice to it, that we sound like Charlie Brown's teacher, right? It all sounds the same. And we need, as leaders, to be listening, to be able to channel your energy, your anger, your frustration, your hopes, your aspirations into policies that bring this country back to a better place. And so I absolutely agree with your premise of your question about the way the media plays these things. I also agree with your criticism of us, that we're not listening. And that's why I talked about that right in the beginning. Because one of the things this campaign has taught me is the wisdom of that advice that my political science professor gave me, nearly 35 years ago. If you're going to be a good leader, you have to listen. And the American people are tired of being told they're wrong and they're stupid and they don't get it, they don't understand. They're tired of hearing that. Because guess what? Most of the time they're not wrong. The genius of this country is in the wisdom and the energy and the work ethic of its people. And we as leaders are supposed to be folks who are not only vessels through which you can express that, but also can then use the experience and the knowledge we've gained over time to be able to make it work, to take that frustration and channel it into something productive for the country. And so I think the things you point out in terms of our inability to do that forms the basis of some of the frustration, the anger that the American people are feeling, along with the conditions in the country that contribute to that as well, that we talked about a bit earlier. So all I can say to you about me is I'm doing my best. I understand what the problem is. I hear you. And I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to listen more and to be able to channel for you that anger and that frustration, and also the hopes and the aspirations that you have for a better future for your family and a better future for our country into concrete things that can make it happen. All I can promise you to do is the best that I can. No other candidate should be able to promise you anything more than that. We can be a guarantor of results. We can just be a guarantor of the best effort we can. And I'm trying, because I mentioned it, and that's the essence, I think, of your complaint, is that we're not listening. We're dictating, we're lecturing. Whether it's the media, whether it's political leaders, we're lecturing to you that somehow you're wrong and you're bad. And so you'll never Jersey. We pride ourselves. I spent a lot of years catching them. These folks who commit these masterminds are geniuses. They're evil. Evil, bad people who are trying to take advantage of the good people who play by the rules. And that's why the 7 years I had as a prosecutor are the proudest years of my career. Because every day I was doing something that was purely good. Off the streets so that goodness could flourish. And that's exactly the kind of presidency I'll try to have as well. So thanks for the question.
Dealing with the budget, which of course is part of why we're here today as a nation on sort of stopgap budgets. And in the Oval Office, you do not have a item veto.
I don't.
And as the new governor in New Jersey,
$1 billion.
and so my question, the change in the dynamic, seeing a budget that you no longer have control over.
Yeah, it's going to be really smart. And veto over my 6 years. You have the ultimate that with a 2/3 vote, and it's very rare that can ever happen. And so on the federal side, I work up front in crafting that budget. And a lot more work in developing those relationships that allow them to understand what you're willing to put up with and what you're not. And you may have to veto things completely. Or that should be a last resort, because that'll lead to closing of the government and all the rest of it. But they have to know you're willing to do that. They have to know that you're willing to have that in your back pocket. And you can see this president has used it fairly effectively, quite frankly, to intimidate this Congress, this Republican Congress, from doing things. I mean, you heard Marco Rubio a few weeks ago say he doesn't go to the Senate and he doesn't vote anymore because his vote doesn't really matter. His vote won't matter until we have a Republican president. Well, first of all, then quit, okay? I mean, you know, if your vote doesn't matter and you don't want to show up and go and vote and your vote doesn't matter, well, then quit. And give your vote to somebody who thinks it actually does matter. Because I think it does matter. See, because people who have never had to use the veto think it's easy to use the veto. When you use the veto, you're out there all on your own. It's all you by yourself. We should force this president to veto more things. We should put things on his desk like the repeal of Obamacare, like defunding Planned Parenthood, like changes to the funding formulas that we have in Medicaid and Medicare that are bankrupting the country. We should force him to veto those because it's him stating what his principles are. He can hide otherwise. and blame it all on them. And so I don't agree with these folks in Congress, including Senator Rubio, who said that his vote doesn't matter anymore, and that's why he doesn't show up. By the way, that's also baloney. He doesn't show up because he's running for president. Like, if his vote didn't matter, it doesn't matter any more today than yesterday than it did today. We haven't had a Republican president the entire time Senator Rubio's been in office. So his vote never mattered under his theory. So why was he showing up before and voting? So let him just be honest with everybody. He's not showing up now because he's running for president. Okay, I understand that. But don't try to make it some, like, self-righteous, act of patriotism and a stand that I'm taking because we need a new president. Come on, Marco, we don't believe any of that. You're not showing up because you got to be here. Well, not here. He's never here. But in Iowa or in New York at hedge fund places raising money and all the rest of whatever it is he's doing. So as president, I'm going to have to put a lot of work in up front. And I'm going to have to develop these relationships, and I'm going to have to try to craft a budget up front that I can live with. And the only avenue I'm going to have in response, if they go way overboard, is the ultimate veto. And I hope not to have to use that. And that's going to mean a lot of work up front and a lot of support from all of you. Here's the last element of it that we forget about, and what Ronald Reagan used really well. He used those Oval Office addresses, and you remember them. And you remember he'd give us a call to action at the end. Call your member of Congress right now. Tell him you support what I'm asking you to do. You know that matters. When you hear from your constituents in large numbers, it all of a sudden can give you a whole new point of view. And so the president needs to use the bully pulpit as well to rally the public to the cause. And if you've talked about these things in a campaign, then you can have the real justification to say to the public, well, you voted for me and I talked about these things, now will you support me? And you can use that with Congress as well. But you're right, at your core, I will miss the line item veto a lot, because it's a great tool to impose discipline on spending, and we need to have it. Unfortunately, the federal courts have said it's unconstitutional at the federal level, so we're not going to have it. But I'll adjust. And let me tell you, there's lots of things that have been said about me over time that I misunderstood is not one of them. So Congress will understand my intent, and if they want to have a fight with the President of the United States, they'll get one. They want to work with them. I can do both. I have more than one club in them both. He told me 2 questions to do. And the reason for that is I want to show him who's still the boss. But all staff, right? Now, we know this guy's president. Anybody else in the audience have run for president? If you haven't, I'll tell you what running for president is like. Running for president, which everyone thinks is glamorous, here's what it is. Younger than you, who tell you the only time of the shackles that these young people put on me is when I'm standing right here. Because they don't have the hook they give if I don't want to. So when they put their little signals up, you see they're walking around, Matt's back there, Sam's there, they do this to me. And they make me like go, so every once in a while you see me doing this, I'm like, I'm acknowledging that I see that they've told me one more question. But it doesn't mean I have to listen to them. So I'm going to do 2 more questions. I promised this gentleman in the back, this veteran, on the way in, he said, I've got a bunch of questions for you. And I said, okay, I'll call on you. So I'm going to be good to my word. We'll start with this gentleman, and then we'll go to this lady back here. Those will be our last 2.
Yes, Mr. Christie, I have.
Turn that microphone on. There we go. Come on, let's go. Go ahead. Hold it closer.
That's on now, I guess. Say, listen, the thing that has bothered me for quite a number of years now, and I have called my congressman times about this, is the closing or tightening up of a southern border, Mexico border. I have had a lot of too with SACers. These were Japanese singles that do a lot of damage, And they don't seem to look into it later on. In the meantime, the terrorists are not going to stop waiting for this study. But anyway, I would like know what you would do about this, because one of germ warfare in a reservoir or some chemical weapon in a city can do damage.
Sure.
Belief.
We saw what two people could. Codes. They're right there. Everybody has barcodes. Want to access services in this country. Overstayed your welcome. That's the moment where we tap you on the shoulder and say, thank you for coming. And there's no reason we shouldn't tighten that up. And that's not only, but it's for national security as well. Student visas and come into this country and had ill intent for our citizens. We need to keep an eye on these folks and make sure they're allowed to, but no longer. And, you know, one of the things that the lady's question back there, you know, alludes to is that Americans feel like we're being taken advantage of, that our good will, our big hearts are being taken advantage of. The governments are going to say, we still continue to do good acts, but we do not take advantage of. And actually a country who knows what we're doing, and that our goodwill will not be taken advantage of. So those are the 5 steps I would take. All the tens of billions dollar wall that we don't need and that sends the wrong message, by the way, for us as a country. I'll just tell you this, you're from Sicily. My great-grandfather was a Mason. And when their ticket got called to come to America, my great-grandmother was 9 months pregnant. So they had to decide, do they take their opportunity and get on that boat then, or do they skip their opportunity and have to wait to go to the back of the line? my great-grandmother got on that boat knowing that she was going to give birth on that boat. And she did. She gave birth to my grandfather in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, coming from Sicily to New York. I have to tell you, I don't know exactly what the boat looked like and how the accommodations were, but given that my great-grandfather had $7 in his pocket when he came to the U.S., I got a feeling that that was probably not the most comfortable experience my great-grandmother ever had. But they were committed to coming to this country and coming the right way. And my great-grandfather was a Mason. He heard they were building lots of things over here in America, and he wanted to come over and make his life. And my grandfather was born on that boat, and I'll tell you, it was one of the things that, one of the only times I ever saw my grandfather get angry when I was a kid, my mother used to tease him incessantly. She'd say, you know, Dad, you're nothing. You're not Sicilian, you're not American, you were born in the middle of the ocean. You're nothing. My grandfather used to get so hot, he'd get all red and he'd say, don't say that in front of my grandson. I'm an American. They made me an American when I got to Ellis Island. My mother turned me over on Ellis Island when she got there, and they made me an American. Don't say that. My grandfather, who also was a Mason, was so incredibly proud of the fact that his mother and father made their way over here in that way. We do not want to send the signal that we don't want people still coming to this country. We just want them coming the right way. We want them coming legally. We want them coming in a controlled way. People who share our values and who want to build a great life for themselves, like my great-grandfather and great-grandmother wanted to. We don't want to lose that in this country. And so we got to be careful about the way we do this. We can do it effectively and efficiently, but we cannot do it in a way that diminishes our ability to grow this country and to make it even greater. Because I believe this country is a greater place because my great-grandparents came here. And so I think all of you do too. So this young lady right back here for the last question. There you go.
Thank you for taking my question. And I was very impressed watching you in the Wolf Ball Parade this past summer. That was a lot of fun.
I had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I got yelled at by my wife all the time. She told me I was shaking too many hands and
You were
holding up the
great.
parade.
You were great.
But I was having fun.
I would love to see you get the nomination. I love your no-nonsense style. One of my biggest fears is with the election and the voting system. Now, I could be wrong, but after watching the 2012 elections, it seems like the American people and their voice and their votes don't really count. And I'm worried that the Republican Party could never get elected again because of what happens.
Well, I think there's been some changes over the last number of years. This is the power of electing 31 Republican governors out of 50 states. You've seen a lot of the voting systems across the country being changed to give them more integrity. And because the governors control those voting systems, I mean, listen, I've vetoed a couple of bills already that were intent in New Jersey on making our system much more wide open and much more fraught with fraud. And I've stopped those in New Jersey from happening. And in Republican states where Republicans have had Republican legislatures with the governors, they've changed the laws in order to make the systems much more reliable from a technological perspective and also much less open to fraud. And so I applaud my fellow Republican governors who have done that around the country, and your wisdom in putting Republican governors across this country in 31 now of the 50 states has helped to tighten that up a little bit. So I'm less concerned about it than I was, let's say, 4 or 6 years ago. But it's still, listen, it's still going to require great vigilance. And unfortunately, it's going to be the Lawyer Full Employment Act we'll tell you for our campaign it will be. If I'm the Republican nominee for president, which I intend to be, you can be banking on the fact that I'm going to have good, smart, aggressive lawyers in every state in this country to be watching what goes on Election Day. And in the days before election in those states that have early voting. Because you all have gotten to know me a bit now, 52 days here in New Hampshire. You don't think for a minute I'm going to let them steal this from me, do you? Okay, we're not going to let them steal this from us. And if they try to steal it, we're going to catch them. That's the good thing about having a prosecutor at the top of the ticket. I got a lot of friends who know how to investigate lots of things. And we'll have a lot of good lawyers and volunteers around the country to absolutely do the best we can to ensure that when you cast your vote, that your vote counts and it matters and it's not diluted or diminished by fraud. You know, there's lots of old sayings about this in New Jersey, as you can imagine, right? You know, one of my predecessors, Governor Brendan Byrne, a Democrat, Governor Byrne tells this joke. He says, you know, I made my wife Ruth promise me that when I die, that she'll bury me in Hudson County, New Jersey, so that I can remain active in politics. Right, so we all know the jokes about fraud and other things, but when you're talking about elections that were as close as the 2000 election was, as close as the 2004 election was, we're staying up late into the night or waiting weeks to find out who the next president of the United States is, every vote does count. Every vote matters. And so I share your concern. I think Republican governors have done a lot around the country to make our systems more secure for 2016. And remember, by the way, when you have Republican governors presiding over 31 of the states, that means they've appointed, in many cases, the election officers that oversee it. So you can be guaranteed, like for instance in my state, the Secretary of State who oversees the election process is my lieutenant governor. Well, you can be sure we're going to be vigilant in New Jersey about making sure the Democrats don't try to heist it. And I think in a lot of other states they're going to do exactly the same thing. So it's not something to be unconcerned about, but I think it's something that we can not eliminate, but diminish. There's always going to be some fraud in elections, always. What you hope to do is to minimize it as much as you possibly can. I think a lot of the steps that Republican governors have taken in their individual states and the steps we'll take as the nominee of our party from state to state on ballot integrity will be something that we'll keep a close eye on so that when you vote here in New Hampshire, you know your vote's going to count and not be diluted by somebody who's voting 3 or 4 or 5 times or some phantom person who's voting once. It's important, and all of us lived through the 2000 election. We don't want to live through something like that again. I was the lawyer for the Bush campaign in New Jersey. Fortunately, he lost by 18. And if you were the lawyers in Florida, it was a long few weeks to go through. And the ramifications for our country could have been significant. Imagine if on 9/11 it wasn't George W. Bush who was president, but Al Gore. I don't know. I got to tell you the truth. He probably wouldn't have been paying attention anyway. He would have been doing something on climate change, I suspect. All right. I do have to go because I have another event to go to here in New Hampshire. And so I don't want to be too late for that one, which I suspect I will be now, but hopefully just a little late. But you're such a great crowd this morning. And the fact that you're willing to take 2 hours this morning on a Saturday morning, 2 weeks before Christmas, to come and listen to me, I first want to say thank you very much. Thank you for your willingness to come here and listen to me. I appreciate it. And I love New Hampshire because, one of my early town hall meetings, I had a guy come up to me afterwards and say, Governor, I'm happy to have been here today. I really was impressed. I agree with much of what you said, and I'm not voting for you. And I said, you're not voting for me? What do you mean you're not voting for me? He said, yeah, you forgot to do something. And he said, since you forgot to do this, he said, then I can't vote for you. He said, but I want to let you know you're on the right track. You're doing a good job. And I said, well, could you tell me what I forgot to do? And he said, sure, I'd be happy to. You didn't ask for my vote. He said, you didn't ask for the vote. You don't ask for the vote, you don't get it. And he said, so I like you, and I agree with you, but I'm not voting for you. And he turned around and started to walk away. And I said, sir, wait, and this is an older guy. He looked at me in his late 70s, early 80s. And I said, sir, can I have your vote? And he said, no, too late. I said, too late? It's only August. I can't have vote until February. And he said, oh, listen, I'll make a deal with you. He said, I'll come back to another town hall meeting another time. He said, and I'll see if you've learned your lesson. If you learn your lesson, I'll give you another shot. And I said, all right, I appreciate it. And they turned around and walked away again. And he stopped after about 4 or 5 steps. He turned, he looked over his shoulder, he said, and by the way, son, that's the way we do things in New Hampshire. So I've taken that lesson to heart. I'm asking for your vote. I'm asking each and every one of you to vote now. Now, I know you get the owner's manual here for voting in New Hampshire. You don't show it to us out-of-staters, but I know you have it. And part of what's in that manual is you say, the polite thing to say to everybody is, welcome to New Hampshire, and you're in my top 3. Right? All you people say that. You do, and I know I've been here long enough now to know you're in my top 3. Well, in the beginning, when you're here in June and July and August, that's a really good thing. Like, hey, man, there's 17 candidates. I'm in the top 3. All right, we're making. Guess what now? 7 weeks to go. I'm done being in your top 3. All right. And I want to know when the pollsters call you people, which one of the 3 names do you give? Because that's very important to know. I'm asking for your vote now. I said this at the beginning. It's game time now. And it's not only game time for you, it's game time for me. And I want your vote, and I'm asking for your vote. But I don't just want your vote. I also want your trust and your confidence. See, because if I get your vote, I'll get to the White House, and that'll be great. But if I don't have your trust and your confidence too, I can't be a good president. It goes together. It's what this lady talked about before in her question. If you don't have trust and confidence in the person who gets this job, whether you voted for them or not, it's going to be really hard to be a good president. I want not just your vote, but I want your trust and your confidence too. And I know in these town hall meetings here in New Hampshire in 1999 and 2000, that Governor George Bush came here and campaigned. And some of you in this room may have even been at town hall meetings back then with Governor Bush. I'm sure none of you asked him, Governor, what if radical Islamic jihadists hijack 4 American commercial airliners, fly 2 of them into the World Trade Center, fly 1 of them in the Pentagon, and then crash 1 of them in an open field in Pennsylvania when they were trying to fly it into the Capitol dome? If you're president and that happens, what are you going to do? Sure that no one asked Governor Bush that question. What happened on September to get us through that crisis? Why? Why did we know that? Because this process helped us get to know him. See, you can go on my website and you'll see all detailed proposals on lots of different things that you'll care about, and I urge you to go to chrischristie.com and read them, see whether they're your cup of tea or not. It's important. But it's not the only thing, because there are going to be things that are going to happen to me in the presidency that we'll never be able to anticipate. And when those moments happen, all you're going to have to count on is, do I know who he is? So I'm going to end by telling you who I am. A Sicilian mother. Now, my Irish father, and we live stream all these town halls. My dad is watching at home today. Sure. He's 82 years old. Incredibly gregarious, outgoing Irishman. He has been to come up here and campaign. And the threat is being realized next Friday. Dad is coming. And when you meet him next week on our bus tour, if you he'll hug you and thank you for voting for me, even if you haven't said you're going to. He assumes the best of everybody. Life, my dad was merely Mom was the driver. Mom set all the rules in the house. Mom was judge, jury, and executioner. And one of the rules that my mother set, the most important rule in our anytime she had a gripe or a problem, man, you heard about it. And when you're a kid, you just have to sit and listen. As I got older as a teenager, and I could push back a little bit. All right, Mom, enough. I get it. I hear you. I'm sorry. I apologize for anyone who did this. I didn't. Whatever. Just anything that would make it stop. And she'd say, no, Christopher, you're going to hear it now. I need to get this off my chest. There will be no deathbed confession. You're going to hear it right now. This was my mother, because my mom passed away 11 years ago. And she was a lifetime smoker. Mom started smoking when she was, and she got addicted. over the course of her life struggle like didn't help with the smoking, but man, it mellowed her out. When she had the hypnosis, like when she was it didn't help with the smoking. She stopped doing it. And finally, on Valentine's Day of 2004, she was right. It either is a real slow growth for a long time, or it's really aggressive and really fast, depending upon the kind of cancer it is. Mom, it was very fast and very and here. She was diagnosed on Valentine's Day, really ill. And I was away at the U.S. Attorney's National Conference in San Diego. I got a call from my younger brother, and he said to me, listen, they had to put Mom back in the hospital. She's taking a real turn for the worse, and the doctors are telling us that if you want to see her, you need to get home right away. So I left the conference. I took the red-eye flight home from San Diego and flew home. And I got to the hospital that next morning, drove my car over there. When I got there, they'd already started to give her morphine. For those of you who have lost loved ones to cancer, you know that's kind of the last stage. They're just trying to make her comfortable from the pain, just to ease her way out of this world. And so she was awake and asleep and nodding in and out, and I sat there for a while. And then finally she woke up, and it was so typical of my mother. She hadn't seen me for a week. And no hello or how are you or anything. She looked at me, she goes, what day is it? I said, well, good to see you, Mom. Just got back from my trip and here to see you. It's Friday. She said, what time is it? I said, it's 9:30 in the morning. And she said, go to work. I said, Mom, I just flew all the way across the country from this conference to come and see you. I'm taking the day off today. I'm going to spend the day here with you. I'm not going to work. And she said to me, Christopher, it is a work day. Go to work. Like, Mom, what are you afraid of not getting your taxpayers' money's worth? Like, I'll make up the time. Don't worry about it. I'm not going to work. She reached across and she grabbed my hand and she said, Christopher, go to work. It's where you belong. There's nothing left unsaid between us. Now, other than the birth of our 4 children, it was the single most powerful moment of my life. My mother, my role model, the strongest person I'd ever met, was giving me permission to let her go. And what I realized when I was sitting there was, damn, man, she's right again. She's right again. There is nothing left unsaid between us because of the way she raised us. How many times she said to me, there'll be no deathbed confessions. And she was right. Every grievance had been aired. Every joy had been shared. Everything we needed to say to each other, we had said. And so I did as I was told. I got up, I kissed her on the forehead, and I said, okay, Mom, I'll go to work. And she looked at me and she said, good boy. And I left. And it was the last words we ever spoke to each other. 3 hours later, she went into a coma. And 3 days later, she died. And I have to tell you, everybody, I have no regrets. None at all. Because she lived her life the way she wanted to live it, and she taught me how to live my life without regret. And I know that if she were still alive today, to see this circus that my life has become, she'd have a lot to say. 2 things I know she'd say for sure. First thing she'd say is, so, you're running for president of the United States, Mr. Big Shot. I changed your diaper, buddy. Don't act like a big shot with me. I know who you are. My mother would be intent on keeping my feet on the ground and my head on my shoulders. It's important to her. And the second thing I know she'd say is like, okay, if you're going to do this, if you're going to ask these people outside of their own, then you better tell them what you think and exactly how you feel. Because in a trusting relationship, Christopher, that's what we do. So, before Trump got in the race, I was the most psychoanalyzed candidate in America. that he's in, I'm only second, but not bad. I'm like, why do you say the things you say? Why do you act? Why do you do these things? Are you angry? What's wrong with you? Now, all of you know. It's her. See, it's her. That's. And I don't know how to be anything else. I don't know how to be anything else. I'm 53 years old now. This is it. The cake is baked. All right, this is it. This is who I am. And so, when I ask you for that trust, you will TV off some nights because you're tired of hearing what I think. Don't hide it. You'll see it. You'll always know what I'm fight for. Because you'll see me doing it. And you'll always know how hard I'm willing to fight to get this job. It's not been easy, and it won't continue to be easy. But it's not supposed to be. Hard. I'm not one of these guys who's going to be looking to wander around New Hampshire. I wish it were more joy. I wish I were having a better time. I'm the grandson of the Mason who was in the middle of the Atlantic. And I'm now running for president of the United States. I got nothing to complain about. And so, over the course of the next 7 weeks, as you start to decide who to vote for, I want you to think about all the things we talked about today. Anything else I want you to know, that what you see is what you get. And it's who I've been. And while every day I try to learn new things, it doesn't change at core who I am. I'm the son of that woman who said there would be no deathbed confessions. I'm the husband of a woman who's number 9 of 10 children, raising 4 of our own, and who is as strong as anybody I've ever met. And I'm the kind of person who will always tell you what I believe, whether you like it or not. And I think it's about time we have a president like that again. So thanks for giving me the chance. I'll see you.